30 days ago, I released a game where anyone could create their own racing AI by snapping code blocks together like digital Legos. Each AI had the ability to observe the world using 3 sphere casts and invisible waypoints placed around each track. These observations were then processed and converted into throttle and steering for the cars. I challenged 7 devs to build the best AI they could in just 90 minutes and then simulated them in a tournament. I put the game on Discord for anyone to download and figured that was the end of it, but I was wrong. Within days, players figured out how to make CPU clocks and memory. Cars got so much better. It was really exciting to watch, but there was an artificial ceiling. As Dryden pointed out in the last video, performance wasn't great even before everyone's solutions got more complex. I ran the first tournament strategically as head-to-head for that very reason. So I took some time and made some other improvements. The game can now simulate all 7 of the original competitors at close to 400 frames per second. The simulations are also now way more consistent. Nodes were originally solved in the order in which they were added. Some players figured this out and used it to make better cars by meticulously placing nodes. Kudos to them for figuring it out, but also that's something I really needed to address. I added a tree sorting algorithm so now everything solves in the proper order, and it makes everything way more consistent. 2 cars with different node layouts but the same functionality will now follow the exact same path. I was even able to improve cars that were unable to finish in the first tournament. At some point, I noticed Dual Wielded must have mistakenly loaded a copy of his solution on top of itself, which resulted in 2 competing scripts. But now I only solve nodes that branch from a single controller, so it just fixes his car. I also converted the head-to-head style tournament into a group scoring system similar to how the F1 works. So naturally, with much better cars and a better simulation, we've got to run a tournament back. This is the Indie Dev 501. 45 racers from 18 different countries will compete across 5 heats. The first place finisher in each heat will move on, and after all heats are complete, the remaining top scoring racers will compete for the final spots in the semis. Before we get to the qualifiers, this video is sponsored by Bezi, a new tool for game developers that allows AI prompting for Unity projects. This means you can reference all of your scripts, game objects, and project settings to find solutions without you having to include a bunch of extra context. Now, I know you're probably sick of hearing about AI because it's become a buzzword that's been tacked onto basically everything. AI for the sake of having AI. But over the past couple of months, I've been trying out Bezi on smaller prototype projects, and I can tell you that it's a useful tool that just happens to use AI. Their small team has made so many usability improvements since I've been using it that it's actually been insane. And they've just released a feature called Agent Mode that allows reviewing and accepting code changes that get applied directly to your scripts. It's super cool, even though I'm slightly terrified of it. If you're interested in checking out Bezi, there's a free tier you can get started with at bezi.com. The standout star of Heat 1 was Blockhead. He led each of the 4 tracks to sweep the competition. Solid showings from Bob and Ghost, but a pretty clear separation in this one. Some of our competitors decided to do victory donuts before crossing the starting line, but it may not have made a difference if they decided to compete anyway. The first tracks are handily won by Gorn99. On the final track, however, Gerard gave him a bit of trouble. A road collision on the first turn of lap 3 causes Gorn to lose control, allowing Gerard to take the lead and break a clean sweep. A competitive race throughout in the middle for Gerito and the EJ Factor. Heat 3 contains the winner of the first tournament, Zach. Surely he'll be looking to retain his title. The competition was simply too steep though. Kiss and the Atom consistently ahead of the pack in each race. Kiss sweeps Heat 3. Heat 4 starts with a similar story to the other heats. Max Colapinto out in first, followed by the Mad Yoke. On track 3, Azai has a surprising showing though. After 2 DNFs on tracks 1 and 2, he steals first on track 3. This stops Max Colapinto's otherwise clean sweep. After 4 decisive heats, Heat 5 ends up being extremely competitive. Less than 2 seconds between the top 4 cars in track 1. Zidane collides with the Bollards on track 2, causing him to drop from the main pack. Benni takes track 2. The fierce battle between the two Swedes ends up with Dingy in the lead over Potato. Going into track 3, Dingy and Benni are tied in points. Benni slowly creates some separation from Dingy and finishes in first to take the lead in the tournament. Benni, Dingy, and Potato all in possible contention of taking this heat as we move into the final race. Good starts for all three on that track, but a collision halfway through on the first lap causes Benni to fall in position. Potato takes the lead until he loses control on the second to last turn of lap 1 and never recovers. Sudan and Derry take the lead, followed by Dingy. On the final turns, Benni is able to overtake Handle and finish the race in 4th, meaning that Heat 5 ends with a tie for first. I didn't plan for this, so both will advance to the semifinals. After this heat, we know 6 competitors moving to the semifinals: Blockhead, Gorn, Kiss, Max Colapinto, Benni, and Dingy. The remaining top competitors will compete in a final heat. The top 6 racers will move to the semifinals, and the bottom 4 will be eliminated. We're here at the starting line for the final heat of the qualifiers. While all of our F1 carts get ready, let's hear from our wild card of the match, Bob 3.7.
Hello, this is Bob Qualifiers. I'm going to show you my cart a little bit, Bob 3.7. I have a main throttle, so you get the distance of the cart's left point to the center of the waypoint and subtract that from the right, and you can turn with that. I have some hard steering, so whenever the cart doesn't hit a wall on the left or right, it'll turn really hard to the left or right, whatever direction. My main throttle I have, so it's a linear line, so depending on how far it is from the wall, it will slow down to the right speed. I also have downhill code, so whenever it's on a downslope, depending on the speed of the cart, it'll slow down to the right amount. And I keep talking about the speed, which I got from Blockhead and Moronic Idiot, who gave me the code for this. I also use that code for my throttle too. There's an exception that the throttle won't be able to slow down if it's below a certain speed, so it's always pretty fast.
It's time. 3, 2, 1. Around halfway through the first lap, Potato is in the lead, but tighter turns by Zudan and Ghost give them some separation. But a weak last turn by Zudan causes him to lose momentum, which allows Ghost to overtake. Less than 3 seconds of time between our top 6 after track 1. On track 2, it's a very close pack of leading racers. Going into lap 2, Gerard has become the clear frontrunner and is creating some separation. Sudan has another collision at the same location as his earlier heat, causing him to drop from the pack. Gerard wins while Potato commands the second place spot and a photo finish between Ghost and Bob. This next track could really shake things up. The long straights really favor speed. Despite a very close pack, Bob takes the lead and holds on to it, getting his first win of the tournament. This also puts him into first for points. Heading into the final race of the qualifiers, Bob, Gerard, Ghost, and Potatoes have all clinched their spots for the semifinals. A surprise win or DNF could shake things up though. Bob starts this one strong, but halfway through the first lap, the Atom finds a way to overtake. Potato loses control at the final turn again and doesn't appear to have any recovery. He's not in jeopardy of losing his spot in the semis, but this does mean some other competitors will likely be handed some extra free points. Some unlucky turns by the Atom at the end of lap 2 cause him to lose momentum and Gerard slips into first. However, a wide turn allows the Atom to quickly overtake again. At this point, Titter seems like the only one vying for that final spot, but he still has a lot of ground to make up. His route to move on is narrowing. A very close finish between the Atom and Gerard, but the Atom is able to hold on to this one and get his first win. All of Titter's routes to advance have now closed. We now have our final 12 competitors moving on to the semifinals. Surprisingly, all of the racers from the original tournament have been eliminated. Certainly a testament to the advancements everyone has made without a time limit. To illustrate how much faster the cars are, the average time of the semifinalists is over 10 seconds faster per lap than our previous champion. The semifinals consist of 2 heats with 6 racers. The top 3 racers from each heat will advance to the finals, and the bottom 3 are eliminated. The semifinals feature 3 brand new tracks. The roads on these tracks are 1/3 wider, and there are new radiuses for turns. Both of these changes are likely to benefit cars with better racing lines, but each new track also features a unique obstacle. Beach Coil snakes in and around itself to a section with barricades. Each racer's AI will have to navigate its way through a series of close and tight turns. Similar barriers are also placed on the final turn of the track. Our first heat of the semifinals has been set, and it features Blockhead, who handily swept his heat during the qualifiers.
Like any good car, my car consists of steering and throttle. There are 2 types of steering, one of which I'll go over right now. The primary type of steering is used on straightaways, and this takes the waypoint and chooses a point between the closest point to you on the waypoint and the center of the waypoint by lerping between them. The second method of steering is used when I'm going around tighter turns, and this uses the sphere casts, the sides of which I set dynamically depending on what I'm doing. And if one sphere cast on the side is not touching a wall and the front sphere cast is touching a wall, then it knows to full steer in that direction. The throttle is simple and consists of when I'm steering, I will slow down depending on how close my outside sphere cast is to touching the wall. And it lerps between 2 slowdown values using the distance. The hit distance is the T for the linear interpolation. That's how my car functions at a basic level. At a not so basic level, I learned how to store values between frames in my car and use this to find the speed. With this, I was able to tell when my car had just spawned into a track and could then store the value of the closest waypoint to me. This would allow me to determine which track I just spawned in on, and with that, I can adjust values depending on what track it is and code for specific turns.
That strategy worked well for Blockhead in the qualifiers, but we'll see how it fares on these new tracks. Off the starting line, he hugs the turns and gains some distance early. He's navigating the first section of barriers really well. Max Colapinto runs into the second pair, which allows for the Atom to slip into 5th. Zidane and Blockhead neck and neck after the barrier section, followed by Gerard. But it seems like Blockhead just has a different gear he can switch to. Without the obstacles, he creates a ton of space. It appears that Max Colapinto has a much faster car than the Atom. Despite his earlier collision, he's able to easily regain his spot. Blockhead and Zidane navigate the final 2 barriers easily, but Gerard isn't so lucky. And it appears he may not have a system for recovery on his car. Max Colapinto also collides with the last barrier but is able to recover. Inde has a solid showing so far, steady in the middle of the group. All 3 of the top 3 racers navigate the barriers. Max Colapinto has regained his spot from the Atom, but again collides with another barrier. Atom's consistency may pay off in this race despite his slower speed. Going into the last curve of the lap with barriers, Blockhead clips with the first one, allowing Zidane to overtake. Inde collides with the final barrier and also appears to have no recovery. This one looks like a very different race leading into the final lap. Blockhead seems to be regaining some ground on Zidane, while the Atom seems to have created a significant gap from Max Colapinto. A second collision on the final barrier for Blockhead will hurt his final time, but not his position. The Atom finishes, followed by Max Colapinto 4 seconds later. DNFs for Gerard and Inde on track 1. The second new track is Snetterton, based on the famous track with the same name located in Norfolk, England. This track is the longest track of the tournament where consistency and speed will shine. After the first few sections, a coned off portion funnels the racer at corner 4. The longest straight of the track is a rainbow tunnel that leads into a tight curve. The last section of the track has a coned off funnel shape where players will need to manage their speed before ending back at the starting line. A similar start to the race in this one, Blockhead out in front, followed by Zidane and Gerard. The speed difference in cars really showing itself on this track as the Atom falls behind pretty significantly early on. A bit of a rough turn for Zidane allows Max Colapinto and Gerard to slip in front of him. Every second, the gap between the core pack and the Atom is growing. Coming into the cone section, Gerard, Inde, and Max Colapinto all collide with the cone. Max is the only one who is able to recover. The Atom advances to 4th. Over the course of lap 2, the gap between each car widens. Despite collisions at the cones on every lap for Max Colapinto, he's still able to finish in 3rd, followed by the Atom nearly 15 seconds later. DNFs for Argentina's Gerard and Sweden's Dingy. After this race, Blockhead and Zidane have clinched their spots in the finals, but the third spot is still up for grabs. The final track is Crisscross. It starts off with a curved ramp, the only track with one in the entire simulation. Coming off the elevated section sends each racer into a crisscross that will test their car's ability to navigate the course correctly. Following that is a tightly curved section and then into a tunnel under a pedestrian walkway. The ramps into and out of the tunnel are the longest and steepest on any track. The racers to keep a close eye on in this one are the bottom four. The Atom and Max Colapinto, currently tied for the third spot, will be hoping their strategies pay off.
Hey there, I'm Adam, and this is my kart, the Atom. My design was focused on simplicity and performance on the Clover track, because I knew that if I could do good on the Clover track, I'd be able to regain some points that I might lose on the other tracks. Either way, my kart has 2 throttle control systems and 2 steering control systems. For throttle control, we have a basic hill system that slows it down as it goes downhill, but not enough that it actually majorly loses time. For basic throttle control, I use an inversely proportional wall detection system, so that it slows down more the closer it gets to a wall, so as to go fast on straightaways, but slow in the tight turns. For steering, I've got a basic sphere cast system. It will just use the sphere casts and input sharp left or right turns, depending on which one is open and if the other one is closed. However, I also use a basic waypoint system, which takes the left and right distances to the center of the next waypoint and subtracts them, and multiplies that by a value, and uses that as a steering system to keep it in the center of the track and help it take better lines. Overall, it drives very well, and I'm very proud of my design.
I'm Kilthrall and we don't have much time, so let's get started. My car consists of 2 main things, a good recovery system and I'm going straight to the wall. The recovery system is the simplest. Basically, if the distance to the wall is less than 1 and it starts going backwards and reverses steering. It also has a teeny tiny little delay. Once it starts reversing, that distance changes from a 1 to a 2, meaning it will get further back, and therefore it has a better chance of not getting stuck. Now for the throttle, we'll need some math. Whoops, haha, that's my Twitch account where I stream development of my multiplayer game and do plays with viewers in most streams. Anyway, back to the math. In this graph, S represents the distance to the wall and Y represents the throttle power, which goes between -1 and 1. Basically, as you can see, it slows down up to a distance of 4, but past that point actually begins to accelerate. My theory for why this works is if you're that close to the wall, you are either about to finish the turn or crash anyway, so might as well go full power. I'm honestly not too confident I'll make it far, so I'll be happy if I get like a 7th place. Oh yeah, there's also steering. It just uses waypoints if it's far from the next waypoint, or a mix of that and sphere cast if it's close to it. So that's it. It's gotta be a world record, right?
Per usual, the Atom quickly falls behind early. After the first turn, Zidane is in the lead. At the first lap, Zidane and Blockhead out in front, followed by Gerard and Max Colapinto. The Atom is in last place, which isn't looking good for his chances of advancing to the finals. Dingy appears to slow down significantly at the end of the ramp, allowing the Atom to overtake briefly before Dingy reclaims his position. And that's the last time the positions will change for the duration of this race. Zidane, Blockhead, and Max Colapinto move to the finals. 2 of the semifinals has some heavy hitters. Hiss cleanly swept his entire heat, and Gorn only dropped 1 map.
Hello, my name is Gorn99 and this is my monster of a card. Initially it was much simpler than this, like only this bottom part, but once the computer was discovered I was implementing it and exploiting it. And basically the concept was to keep all the speed possible along the corners, like Formula 1, and the steering system is like taking into account the waypoints and sphere cast for optimization, but nothing much else. Once the computer was discovered, I used the memory storage to basically get a track selector and optimize all the values into parameters and basically have a kind of better setup depending on the track. I think it was kind of my thing. When going downhill, I was literally braking at 0.4, 0.5, and I think that was kind of the clue that gave me good results.
Beach Coil starts off great for everyone, but Potato gets caught on the second barrier and can't find a way to recover. The rest of the racers continue speeding around the outside barriers, but on the last one, Ghost loses control and runs into the outside wall. Kiss also hits the last barrier and doesn't recover. A slower Benni hits one of the barriers but is able to course correct and slide into third. Our Qualifiers wildcard Bob, meanwhile, pushes into first. Really only 3 racers competing at this point. On the final barrier of the straightaway, Gorn clips the side and doesn't recover, allowing Benni to pass him. 4 of the 6 racers on this track are stuck. Bob has a bit of an odd collision with the final barrier but is able to power through and has a sizable lead to take home first. Benni, who started out decisively behind in this one, is able to claim second. This group is hoping Snetterton treats them better. A bit of a rough showing on the first track. At the first set of cones, Potato seems to get confused and abruptly stops. Benni had seemed significantly slower on the first track, seems to have been enthused by his second place finish, and is now towards the front of the pack. A group of 5 racers are within a meter vying for Gorn's lead. At the final section, Benni and Gorn collide with the cones, allowing Ghost and Bob to overtake. But towards the end of the funnel, Ghost collides with the cones and stops. Bob is free and clear in the lead at lap 1. Potato, Gorn, and Ghost seem destined for DNFs. Just 3 racers left competing in this one: Bob, Benni, and Kiss. In the turns following the tunnel section, Benni widens the gap between him and Kiss, about 2 seconds between them. But he collides with the cones towards the end, which allows Kiss to slip into second to finish lap 2. Bob now significantly out ahead. Benni has a similar lead going into the tunnel section as he did on lap 2. Another collision with the cones for Benni allows Kiss to overtake and finish this one in second. DNFs for Ghost, Gorn, and Potato. After track 2, Bob has clinched his spot in the finals. What a wild heat. At the top of the down ramp, something weird happens to Bob and he slows down to 4th. All of the competitors navigate the first direction of the crisscross cleanly. In the second direction, Potato drifts into the corner and stops. This looks like it could be yet another DNF for him. Ghost out in front, followed closely by Benni. Another slowdown for Bob at the top of the down ramp, just as he had gained position on Kiss. The more points the racers can take from Bob at this point, the better. Gorn currently in the middle of the pack. The positions for the top 3 racers have been pretty consistent. Bob overtakes Kiss early into the final lap as his slowdown into the ramp seemed much less significant. He's able to retain his lead through the intersection, but yet another slowdown going into the downhill for the tunnel. Kiss has gained a lot of ground on him, but he narrowly has the lead. Ghost finishes in first, followed by Benni, Gorn, Bob, and Kiss. Ghost steals 3rd place from Kiss and advances to the finals along with Benni and Bob. We have our finals. 6 racers representing 5 countries. The finals will be on 4 tracks determined by a random wheel spin. This one is fast, so don't blink. All of the competitors seem to take different lines. Blockhead takes the outside. It seems to be a valid strategy because after the first 3 turns, he has a car length lead. Blockhead finishes the first lap with a 10.64. Leading into the second lap, Benni and Blockhead are distancing themselves from the other cars. A fair amount of shifting going on at the back of the line. By the second to last turn, the positions appear to have been established though. Blockhead finishes first, followed by Benni, Bob, Ghost, Max, and Sudan. Just over a second difference between the first and last cars. The second track will be on Beach Coil. This track appeared to be the kryptonite of some of the racers, so we'll see how they fare here. As expected, Blockhead takes the early lead. Max collides with barrier 3, dropping in position. Benni collides with the last barrier of the straightaway, which causes him to fall to last. The massive speed for Blockhead gets him out in front. Blockhead collides with the first barrier on the outside turn. Ghost narrowly snakes through. Max collides with the last barrier but quickly recovers. Benni also has a collision. A very big gap between Max and Benni at this point. Zudan currently in the lead, but this is one track where anything could happen. Blockhead collides with the last barrier of this straight, and Max collides as well. Benni is able to regain some ground, but then quickly loses it again. The race still led by Zudan, Ghost, and Bob. They're all able to cleanly navigate through the barriers on the last curve. Blockhead isn't so lucky and has another collision with the first barrier. Benni may be having a worse time though. At another wild beach coil finish, Zudan jumps from 6th into 2nd, Blockhead with a narrow lead. The original figure 8 for our third track. All racers will have seen this track already, so it'll be interesting to see how they fare. Blockhead gains the lead early and is flying around the course. He finishes with a 46.81, setting a new track record, closely followed by Benni, Max, Ghost, Bob, and Zudan. Heading into the final track, mathematically the only competitor who could potentially take the first spot from Blockhead is Benni.
Hello everyone, my name is Benni. I will be representing the beautiful country of Austria in this Inde 501 tournament. And I'm here to show you my card. In my card I went for a 10, 4, 6, which means 10 speed, 4 acceleration, and 6 turning. There's a lot of stuff going on here, so let me just explain. Here is the turning. It takes the average between steering to the closest point on the next waypoint and the center of the next waypoint, so it takes the average of that, and then averages that average with the average where the sphere casts, which are these things, where these want to steer. Then there are some conditionals which change the steering depending on what situation they're in. For example, if the cart is right up against the wall, meaning it crashed, it is going to drive backwards and reverse the steering, so it gets out of the wall and already steers into the right direction to continue driving. Up here, I initially wanted to get the angle between the front sphere cast and the wall in front of it. These sphere casts are 45 degrees apart, and I wanted to get the angle between this third length. But that's very difficult to do because if you've done any trigonometry, you know that you would need a sine function, and approximating a sine function is very difficult. So I just took the length of this C side and used that in a braking formula, which is this. You can see the longer this side is, the less it's going to break, and the smaller it is, the more it's going to break. And then it just subtracts that amount from the total throttle of 1. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Good luck to everyone participating, and let the best card win.
Benni is hoping for a favorable track and maybe a miracle. Perhaps the best outcome Benni could have hoped for. Crisscross is one of the only tracks Blockhead has shown weakness on. Blockhead does take his typical early lead, but at the first downhill he drops to 4th. Very tight for the top 4 racers. Going into the second half of Crisscross, Benni is in the lead though. A bit of a wide turn for him allows Ghost to slip into 1st. Zudan seems to hit some kind of speed boost at the tunnel and launches into 2nd place briefly. Lap 1 finishes with Ghost, Benni, and Sudan clearly out in front. Benni trying to overtake at the crisscross, but a wide racing line into the tunnel restores the separation. The speed boost Sudan got at the tunnel seems much more minimal on the second lap. No changes in position after lap 2. More defining space has been developed between the racers as we're in the third and final lap of the track and tournament. Ghost and Benni at the front, Sudan and Blockhead in the middle, and Max and Bob at the rear. That appears to be how they'll finish as well. Ghost with a 151.93, just 0.43 seconds off his finish from the semifinals. The rankings shuffle, but it's not enough for anyone to overtake Blockhead. The Turing Trophy is staying with the Americans. Congratulations to Blockhead. Big thank you to everyone who participated in this. It was a lot of fun. And if you want to make your own car, you can still download the game for free on Discord. There's also a supporter version I've updated with the tournament mode from this video and the new tracks. And a big thank you, as always, to the patrons and YouTube members who support this channel. If you liked the video, you may also want to check out the time I had 6 devs from around the world compete in a simulated World Cup.